Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Peter and Sylvia. You know, we're both therapists and we have been in business for a long time doing other things than being therapists. So we have a look at business life, work life in different way. We were there before we started looking into this whole topic of people. So the one we picked out to talk about today is something that comes up a number of times. It's been a trend to say, from people like Sylvia and I, you should bring your whole self to work. You are a whole person, and that is what you bring into work, and that is what you bring from work back into your home life. And then you will see articles popping up here, there, and everywhere from millionaires, billionaires, business owners who say, nah, nope, that's unprofessional. Do not bring your whole self into work. Leave all that rubbish to one side and come into work and be a professional. That's what we demand of you. That's what we expect of you. So we are now back in the either or territory.
Hmm.
That's where I get very uncomfortable because I think it's not bringing everything in the kitchen sink into work. And it's not about taking everything from work back into the home. It's a very individual situation, I think.
Mm.
I also think are we should be better at realizing that it is a whole person that comes into work and that we can choose how much of that whole person we want to put on display and talk about at work.
It's a very interesting topic because throughout 2024, there was a lot of workplace talk, and I've been to conferences and people talking about bring your whole self to work. It's the best thing to do. Raising mental health, or more specifically, poor mental health awareness in workplaces, bring your whole self to work. Big push. But just recently, as you just said, there's been quite a few articles and comments about no, that's not professional. That's not what employers want or demand. I think firstly, it depends on the employer that you're with, whether they're you know compassionate, empathic, and all that stuff, or their own attitude towards the topic. I think separately, it's also down to the individual because I do struggle with this bring your whole self to work thing because I never did. Secondly, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Secondly, this piece about having open conversations. And again, that may convey, in my opinion, a message to people that you come in and you talk to everyone about everything.
Mm.
And in my world, and in my opinion, and in my experience talking to other people, it is your poor mental health or your health in general, is a very private matter. Even with poor physical health, does anyone come in and tell everyone they've got cancer or rheumatoid arthritis? You tell a select few, those that need to know. It's a very private matter. And coming back to bringing your whole self to work, I never did. I brought my work person to work. I used to keep my work face in the lift. You should get into the lift, on it will go, and we perform. I did my job. I was one of these high performing, poor mental health people, but no one knew I was struggling with my mental health. Because in my belief system, and how I operated, it was a private matter. I didn't want people to see it. I didn't want people to know. And equally, and probably more important, I would leave my personal demons and all that stuff at home. By coming to work, there was an element of normality, and I could perform and I could be the person at work, the high performer, and equally have a break, give my mind and my body and my brain a break from all the stuff that I was dealing with at home. I know other people bring their whole self into work. So it is quite a dilemma. I think it's down to what works for the individual, what works for the people around them, and also the organisation itself. But I do have quite a strong resonance with this not bringing your whole self to work, and that may be very what's the word, confrontational or contentious for many people. But it worked. That's what worked for me.
And I think what worked for you is exactly the story that we're not hearing.
Mm,
That it is not a question of either or, it's a
mm,
question of both and.
yeah.
And me thinking back a lot of years, I didn't take my relationship issues into work.
Mm,
I was depressed at the time, clinically depressed big time. I didn't take that into work deliberately, but my whole self at the time was not great.
mm,
So I turned up as in general, not a great person.
mm,
But then again, I didn't know it was depression at the time, so I didn't specifically mention that or anything else. It was just life wasn't great, but they got an employee who didn't feel great.
mm,
So yeah, they got the whole me with my attitudes and all the rest of it without me knowing. But
mm,
I think it is a question of trust as well, and it depends on what job you do
yeah.
and how you feel about it. So just because you can talk about stuff at work, about your personal life, doesn't mean that you should tell everybody everything.
Mm-hmm,
Not everybody needs to know everything.
mm-hmm,
But it might be an idea like people I know who say to their manager, you know what, just leave me this morning because I've had a crap day at home. I'll get back to normal in a second. Just don't worry about me.
mm-hmm,
Then boss knows, maybe a select few team members know, and they don't know the details, they don't need to, but they just leave that person alone. That
mm-hmm,
could be done. On the contrary, we should also not forget that you shouldn't take your wild party over the weekend into work and talk about nothing else. So, so that is part of your whole self as well. So we are made up of different parts that influence how our day is.
mm,
So we do have to think professionally when we are at work,
mm,
but we at the same time should also be allowed to feel different every day.
mm. I think to that point there, picking up on that, you took your whole self to work, and your way of being um, may have been a certain way, but other people are, oh, that's just Peter. They wouldn't have known that you were struggling. A bit like me, looking back on it, going into work, I was, some people might say, oh, that's just Sylvie. Sometimes a bit irritable, a bit grumpy, but a lot of the time it was in a highly pressurized job. But was that a sign that something was going on? But no one ever asked, because it was, oh, that's just the way someone is. And it's interesting, as you say, picking up on the other part, people that go in late on a Monday morning, or there's a phrase, wasn't there? People late start on a Monday, to get over their weekends. But equally, I also think it's down to our individual, like my belief system, my way of being, my attitude, my whole self, my mindset, whatever you want to call it. Because my view was also, well, I'm going into work. Um, I need and want to be 100% because the employer pays me to do that. If I go in and only give 75%, the employer is still going to pay me 100%. They're not going to knock it down a bit. So there is an element, to your point, of trust. I come in to do a job and I get paid. Now, whether that's a simplistic view or not, that's what was going on in my attitude towards my work, towards my profession, and also to keep myself safe.
Yeah.
So I didn't bring my stuff into work, because if I did, potentially I could be very irritable, rude, argumentative to people because there was stuff going on in my world. But I was able to compartmentalize and keep that outside of work. And when I used to go home and shut the door, that's when it would all bubble up. But when I was at work, that was my work performance. That was my work way of being. And that's what worked for me. But as to your point, I think we perhaps need to hear more stories of how people manage when things aren't going too well. And it might not be a poor mental health issue, it might be anything going on outside of work. But how much or how little do we tell, and who to? That's the other question. It's not about telling everyone everything.
And I think to your point there, Sylvia, let us know what you think about this, because you might be an employee, you might be an employer, you might be self-employed. How do you deal with the various aspects of bringing your whole self to work, and how do you deal with people who bring their whole self to
Mm,
work.
mm.
So have a think, let us know what your experiences are. It will be very interesting for us to hear.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because this is quite a contentious area. Bringing your whole self. Would you leave parts of yourself at home? Do you bring your whole self? What's the impact of that? Or do we learn to actually separate? It's a very, very interesting subject. We'd love to hear from you all.
So thank you for watching and for listening, and we shall see you in another video. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye bye.